So, welcome, Mark. I'm very happy
It's lovely to
that
see you
you are
again, Norma.
here. We're not selling Pellegrino.
It's always a pleasure to
You
see you.
look awesome.
So do you.
So, I'm very happy that you agreed to interview me for this podcast series. Just so you know, I've chosen different people that I feel have a connection to some part of what I do and are smart and can ask great questions. So I was so happy that you agreed, and I would like you to obviously introduce yourself and just a line or two. We're going to have a whole bio on
Okay.
you. But
Well, as you know, through my various guises, in various ways we've met, I write lead fashion stories for the Financial Times. I have a design column in the Telegraph. I'm also a photographer. I often shoot and write the material for my pieces. We had that wonderful afternoon at your house upstate, which was phenomenal, and I felt like that really gave me such a great insight into who you are and what you do and what your psyche is and how you approach design. It was very, very interesting. I've known about your work forever because, as you know, I've been coming to New York since the 80s, and it's like Norma was like the sort of Vivienne Westwood of New York, or like, you know, or the Jean Paul Gaultier. It's like a name so synonymous with a certain kind of lifestyle. So I've always been fascinated by what you do. So, and I'm currently working on a book project about people with very personal collections of fashion, which ties into some of the things I want to talk to you about. Should we go straight into the questions?
Please.
Okay. We talked when I saw you last in London, and we had a really lovely afternoon at the Connaught, was it?
Yeah.
And I picked a scab on my arm, and I bled all down my arm. And I remember you saying, "Stop picking it," and it was on the interview. It was very funny. So we talked about gender fluidity and how the work you're doing, the way you're sort of not necessarily reframing, but you're trying to refresh the way you're seen and the way the clothes are seen. This definitely feels like a moment where people are ignoring the parameters of what is male dressing, what is female dressing. Not necessarily on the street, but I know. And we always bemoan, like, oh, nightlife is dead, the clubs are dead, there's nothing out there. But if you do go to a nightclub in London or New York, you do see people who blur boundaries and who look fabulous. And they are the kind of people I'm seeing in your clothing. Why do you feel like we're having this moment now in what is an incredibly conservative time?
Yeah, it is that, and it's very much like the 70s. It's, I know we've talked about this before, but the 70s had a very mixed sort of state of affairs politically. There were wars, there were crises everywhere. There were strikes and fires, sort of like Paris was happening then. New York was bankrupt. It was just chaos, and at the same time, it was also a disruptive time, and the opportunity for things to fester that have been quietly festering came to the surface. So it was feminism, and it was the realization that the world is not all under a straight label, and that finally was breathing, it was getting a life. At the same time, there was this sense of freedom about the way a man or a woman could express themselves through the way they dress. So if you had a feminine power about you, the idea of wearing a bra was not going to happen. And I think I told you I didn't think I wore underwear through the 70s at all, of any kind. And then guys were just showing their feminine side in a way that was very appealing to everyone. It wasn't just for men or just for women. And I cite Mick Jagger because he sort of was the first to swish around wearing makeup, wearing women's clothes, and appealing to everyone. And so the word bisexual became a word. The word asexual became, like, nobody knew how to define it, but it was just being sexual. And some days it's feminine, more feminine, and other days it's more masculine. And it's so much a feeling of what's inside. So that was the beginning. And then AIDS shut it down. And I think the memory of AIDS exists only in people my age and people like, I lived in the West Village. And so my friends were dying. I saw death, and I saw the end of something that was so vital and so powerful. And now the memory is gone, really, even for, you want everyone not to forget, but there is something in that memory passing that allows this to happen again. And like I said, the climate is so much the same politically and in every way you can think of globally, that it's great. And I am so happy about it. I'm especially happy because I saw how free that was, and that there weren't people telling you what was in, what was out. You looked great, you didn't look great. There weren't criticisms about your choices. You could just be who you wanted to be. And showing feminine, masculine at the same time is so beautiful. It's just the best. It's the balance.
Do you think, I often think about the people who was blazing a trail in that respect, and also the people who are doing it now, and I wonder whether it's to do with people who are questioning rather than very self-defining, because there's often in the LGBTQ community, gay men are like, oh, we are pioneers, we are all about fashion, we're all about design, but a lot of gay men are some of the most conservative creatures you'll ever find.
I was just going to say.
They are not.
Yes.
And also, I'm obviously making a sweeping generalization here, and I'm a gay man here wearing a skirt in front of you, and you know how I dress. You know I'm very, my clothing is very much a part of who I am. Right. I left the house a few months ago, and I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I can't remember why, and I suddenly had a panic, and I'm like, no, I can't be this person today. These don't go with these shoes, and I went back and changed into something that I felt was the right thing for me during the day. But but people like David Bowie, people like Mick Jagger, who were seen very much as mainstream, very sexualized icons for. They would have been seen as primarily heterosexual icons, but it was when they blurred that, when they were like, oh, I'm going to wear a fur coat, I am going to wear makeup, I'm going to do what I like. I think that was maybe more groundbreaking and shook things up more than Sylvester or Boy George, who was like, well, this is, this sort of fell. Boy George sort of mixed high fashion at the time in the 80s with that sort of very British pantomime style. Do you feel it has to be that there has to be a blurring of sexuality in the protagonist for it to be interesting? Do you think it's like, or if you say like, I'm gay and I'm going to do this, is that just as restrictive as saying, I'm a blue collar worker, or I work at Goldman Sachs and I wear this suit and this tie?
Well, like you said, I know so many conservative gay men and women, very conservative, and that's their personality. That's who they are. I mean, intrinsically, they're that way. So I don't think it's a defined label. I think a lot of it is personality, and a lot of it is being able to express yourself creatively. So you can't leave the house if something feels off to you, because that's your aesthetic spirit. That's what disturbs you. And I have the same thing, and we know other people who are as crazy as we are. And then there are people who express their feminine side or masculine side in the work they do, or in the way they treat people, or in ways that are very quiet. But the idea of seeing this visually happen is often the beginning of the most conservative being able to feel more relaxed about redefining conservative. And that can be for any gender, any variation on sexuality. So I think seeing it to begin with gives permission, and especially if it's done well. And I love the way it's being done now. I just love it. I think it's fresh and it's exciting. It's not the first time, which is different from when you see it the first time and it's radical. But it only existed for a very short time. So even though it's not the first time, there's still it's so new, and nobody's seen it before in the context that it's in now, that it's going to stimulate and excite and inspire so much more that will evolve from it. So this is just the beginning. This is the door opening. Now think of the possibilities.
Do you think we still dress for sex? Do you think we dress primarily to attract a partner who we can have sex with?
What a great question, because so much of what we do right now is through our phones, meeting people through our phones, communicating. So it's more about the Instagram photo of us that is either appealing or not, and the caption. So I'm not sure that really exists unless there's an intentional. I can almost visualize the girl or the guy who's going to a place to pick up someone, but that's sort of disappearing. It's a different kind of thing right now, and it's more of what you have in common that is attractive. I think more now we're dressing again to express who we are. And I love that. And that means maybe there are less stylists doing that for us, which is such a healthy move, to really know somebody by the choices they personally make. And there's no right or wrong. I mean, the fact that we're so critical of people in the way they look is so horrible and mean, that the fact that somebody can feel good about wearing 2 different color shoes and loving it, or doing whatever, and like maybe it's kooky to some people, but so what?
Yeah.
That expression is so needed, and I think it will spark and give life to the fashion industry in a new way, and it's starting to already, I think. And I think it'll inspire interiors. I think it'll inspire hair, everything, and the way we connect with one another. So there's so much about the way we tell our story, not just through social media, but the way we tell the story, whether it's no makeup, or I wear dresses and not pants, or like, you're saying a lot about who you are. You're saying who you are, and you made this choice. It's a piece of art. I love the way you put yourself together. I think it's just so skillful and easy. It doesn't look like you spent time on it. It just looks like you have certain amount of black pieces in your wardrobe with a white t-shirt, and everything works, and depending on how you feel, you look amazing. And there's no question that it's you, and your hair and your beard, the whole thing. I think that is the definition of what you want everybody to have the freedom to do.
I wonder, and lots, we're not going to talk for a whole hour about sex, but it's so integral to the way we dress and the way we choose what we wear. I also wonder whether we're at a stage now where there's a younger generation who are so much more interested in being open about experimentation, and they don't want to be. They don't say they're straight. They don't say they're bi. It's like, I'm doing this week. If I want to make out with a girl, I'm going to make out with a girl. If I want to make out with a girl and a boy, it's fine. I'll do that. And I think once you have those boundaries are so much looser, I think other things follow. So if I want to wear a pair of high heels, I'll wear it's that kind of thing. Do you agree with that? It's about a generation?
I do. I think so. And I think it's great to not have all of these kind of rules that are in your head from birth of what should be and what shouldn't be, and to be able to have that freedom. And the thing is, it's not given to them. They own it. They just own it.
Yeah.
Nobody said, now you can do this and it's okay, or you can do this and it's radical and different. They don't even see it as radical and different. They don't see it as being, on the dark side. They're just being. And so their idea of sexy and sexy dressing. So if a woman has hairy armpits, that's who she is. So, our models come in with hairy armpits, and I'm not shaving them. That's what they want, and they're sexy and they're gorgeous, and the guys are, free in their way too, and I love it. I think the girls are just relaxed about body hair and all of that, and the guys are caring more. They spend more time actually than the girls do in front of the mirror grooming, and it's like so cool. How great is that? And so I think there's a freedom now that, we should have all been blessed with. But you know what? It's a process. And seeing this happen tells us that all of the crap that we've been exposed to for forever is really disappearing. Like, for real, it's disappearing. It's not, an ad about it. And that it can only create generations of sort of peace about identity.
How quickly do you think we will see greater changes? Because I feel like the issues around transgender rights and visibility have been so fast and so dramatic and so exciting that it's like it's difficult to keep up with, like, where we are, what is going on. But I remember when Jean-Paul Gaultier did skirts for the first time for men in 1985, and the year before Stephen Sprouse had done skirts for men in done in a slightly different way. Stephen Sprouse was very rock and roll, and Gaultier was like, these are long pleated skirts that they looked masculine, which is we'll talk about this concept in a minute. But that show, very famously, I believe it was the whole row of French Vogue editors stood up and walked out because they were scandalized. What is this? This is disgusting. This is weird. Right. This is not how fashion should go. And I at that time, I felt, and I still feel, this is a problem. It's not a skirt. It's that it looks gay. It looks homosexual, and there's still a strange tension with some men, including gay men, who do not want that connotation in their life. Why do we still have that stigma? Why, when we lived through such a liberating era, and now we're having it again, it's still weird. It's still there.
Yeah, and a lot of it is what's taught early on and what the belief system is, and maybe it's I'm not against religion. I think everybody should have a choice about how they want inspiration, and I think God can be there in many ways. But sometimes the storytelling about God is interpretive, and it starts to condemn things that maybe aren't making sense. And so I think a lot of this stuff is just taught through for whatever, not just religion, but politically, and it has to get washed. It just has to. But you can't brainwash people. You can't emotionally wash people, and it's just going to come. It's coming faster and faster. But in the 70s, I'll tell you, it was very interesting. You have to just imagine that in the 60s, no one was gay.
Yeah.
No one was gay. I would go on dates, everybody was straight, no one was gay. Then all of a sudden, there's this gay in the 70s. And I actually knew about it because my mother, somehow in a world where no one is gay, had gay friends. And so I understood that conversation, but then, okay, gay exists. Very interesting. So when guys were coming in and buying my women's clothing in the 70s and wearing wrap skirts over pants and turbans, but I can't express it. It was just cool. It wasn't an expression about being gay or straight. And to be honest, I didn't even know if they were gay or straight. They were just fabulous. Like, whoever they are, they were just fabulous. It wasn't even a conversation. But you didn't hear people, because of the spirit of the time, say, oh, is that a man or a woman? You didn't, you just didn't hear it. I didn't feel the discomfort of that at the time. That came later. Again, it came later. It came in the 80s and 90s. And there is still, when I show pictures of the clothes I'm doing on men and women, it's like, is that a man or a woman? I'm like, oh, good, I'm doing the right thing. You don't know. Ain't that great?
Yeah.
Like, there you go. So now, to me, that's a good thing. If you're having a question, then this is what should be happening.
Yeah. The whole issue of masculine and feminine dressing is interesting, and annoyingly, the name of the designer escapes me. Who creates the tailoring for Connolly in London, but he does these. He has these ranges that are very sort of 70s Yves Saint Laurent, and they're very sexy, but from both men and women, and I think it's all about this very narrow cut and this cashmere that's just sensual to touch on these red leather trench coats. It's like, I want all of this. Right. But it's so different from, I know there's that gender neutral store downtown, which is like, different. It's just t-shirts. It's of course it's gender neutral, it's whatever. So I think it's interesting.
That's the asexual.
The asexual,
or whatever,
yeah. But it's
unisex.
What's interesting is when it is sexy and it could work for either gender. And I remember thinking back to those Gaultier kilts when they came out, and they weren't kilts, they were kind of very long. And I remember thinking, they just look really good. I don't see that as a skirt. But I also felt it was a very masculine skirt, in the same way a kilt is a very masculine kilt. I think a woman in a kilt would look maybe slightly strange, because the design is for, it suits.
Hips,
yes, it's for the hips. It's for like a muscular calf and a boot, and it's very sexy. I went to see Glenda Jackson in King Lear the other evening, which is so interesting. It's one of the ugliest productions I've ever seen in terms of the stage set, and it's confused and muddled, and it detracts from the performances. But there were two interesting elements. Her playing King Lear, and one of the other characters who is a man in a kilt. And I thought two things. One, the man in the kilt looks so sexy. It's just, there's nothing sexy in that. It really accentuates some of the best things I like about a man most. But also with Glenda Jackson, they were playing with these very masculine overcoats and these shapes and these heavy wools, and that was interesting. But fundamentally, it was just an actor being amazing, and you believed in King Lear, and you didn't think about her gender. You didn't think about Glenda Jackson's gender. It was just the power of the performance and the power of how she was presenting her character. Slightly getting off track here, but do you think it's to gender the clothing, to make it masculine or feminine makes it sexy than leaving it neutral?
Well, I think it's about the person, right? A person is appealing or not in the way they present themselves, in the way they speak, and what they say and what they're doing. But I also think the choices of fabrics they wear, or the choices of, like, you sense that fabric feels a certain way on the skin, and the way you talked about that, and how much of the calf is showing, like above the boot. Maybe seeing the whole ankle isn't that great. Maybe just above the boot is right, and just enough of the skirts, the kilts skimming. All of that, it's all those little things. So it could be a white t-shirt that is gender neutral, could be extremely sexy, not because it's in a wet t-shirt contest, on the beach, but because of just where the neckline of it hits and what else they're wearing with it, or how the fit of it is sitting on a male body or a female body. So there's so many things in the choices we make. And some of it is the clothing, and some of it is the simplicity and has nothing to do with the clothing. So I think about the fringe pants that everybody loves now. It's like, I've been doing these pants forever, and so many women have purchased them, but now I see them on guys and I think they look so hot. They look so much better than on any woman. And why do I think that? Because the guy just has a body that's going to be a certain way, and that fringe pant on that body looks just so hot. Whether he has a t-shirt on, or an open shirt, or no shirt, or whatever, tattoos, all of it, it's just, it's like he's moving, his body's moving in a different way than a woman's body has a different kind of move on it. And it's just so hot. And by accident, you see that that's what happens to that piece of fabric on a male form versus a female form. So just like the kilt, there's just something that hits that makes it look so right. And I love to see that what happens when something with a feminine spirit is in a different context. It's so exciting. It's really, it excites, and it's stimulating, and it inspires more. So the good news is there's more to come. This is not the end of the conversation. This is like the super beginning of the conversation.
I think there are so many. Actually, there are not. I retract that. There are too few designers who are pushing that forward. I love what Rick Owens does, and I think one of the things he does so well is as you said, he will use a certain sheer fabric, and it will look so different on a man than it would do on a woman. And I love it when you get those Rick Owens t-shirts on a man, and they're tattered, and you can see the musculature, and it exposes certain parts of the body in a certain way, and then with a woman it drapes in a certain way. But it's not, I don't feel it's feminine or masculine.
Exactly.
It's just, it really is very sexy. And I think also what he's done with skirts, and it's a much more of a sort of sepulchral robe kind of affair, and it just looks very cool. It looks really nice, and I think he's really pushed the skirt forward for men. And I think there's, in the same way that you do things that are so interesting that can work for for either person.
It just is, it's exciting. And I don't think a lot of designers can feel comfortable doing that transition, because the market is so fixed. And part of the conversation I like to have about this is maybe we need to change the market and not have a men's department and a women's department, and have jacket department, trouser department, t-shirt department. Do it in a way where men and women can shop, or anybody can shop in a department if they're looking for a jacket or a place, in the way you do almost when you go to an antiquarius.
Sure.
So you just are looking for things that you love, and it brings back that excitement of shopping again. So I think as an industry, we have to change that, and then more designers won't be so fixed in, I'm in a woman's contemporary market, and my buyer only buys this, and that's what I have to do.
Yeah.
Fortunately, with websites and social media, we can cross through and do that, but a lot of people who have businesses that they don't own themselves can't just say, well, that's what I'm going to do right now.
It is. I was in the Rickon store in London recently, and there was a pair of pants I really wanted because they were a good fit, and the assistant said, "Oh, I think they're from the women's line." But it doesn't matter, does it? Because they're all the same. I'm like, yeah, it's totally the same.
Right.
And I prefer this fabric, and it fits. So it fits because of the way he cuts. It's elasticated. It's baggy. It's whatever.
Right.
Which is something else I want to ask you. Do you think that the way we're being liberated in terms of breaking down gender roles and men's and women's departments, does that come from our hunger now for, and I hate the word athleisure, does it come from a more relaxed way of dressing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, the easier it is to take care of your clothes, the more appealing it is. And the clothes that you can have longer in your wardrobe, I'm sure there are pieces you treasure, you take care of them, and you have them for a long time. That, to me, is really another look at the future of buying things that you intend to wear over and over and over again over a long period of time, or maybe you buy 2 or 3 of them because you know you're going to wear those pieces. So valuing clothes, talking about sustainability, like the sleeping bag coat for me is, you buy it, you have it for life. So things like that, I think, are going to become more and more valuable. So not just what department it's in, but what are you using it for? How are you taking care of it? How long can you have this in your wardrobe? That's a big deal. That's really important.
I know that many designers, in particular Vivienne Westwood, says buy less stuff, buy better stuff, just buy less stuff. I have that long sleeve black T-shirt of yours, which launders so well. It looks pure black every time I launder it, and it's comfortable. It's and it's it's like the perfect base for things. And then I have 4 pairs of en plissé pants that I live in those. So I can be in New York for 6 months with as hold-all, because they you put them through the washing machine, they're dry, it's immediate, it's great. So that's definitely the way forward.
But you're a great example of somebody who totally understands what they are about, who you are, what you want to say, and then you keep it simple. And when you keep it simple, it works. It just does. You're never going to go wrong. You have all the shoes you love, and I'm sure the shoes you don't love, you end up getting rid of.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why have them?
Yeah.
You have all the clothes you love, and you try to take the best care of them so that they're there for you. And I think one of the things I learned from Bunny Mellon, who was a mentor for Jackie Kennedy, and I was fortunate enough to meet her through Robert Isabel. And she exemplified sort of the Diana Vreeland, that whole group of women who only had the clothes that they loved. Jackie Kennedy, she wore the same pants, the same top, she had her thing down. And these women understood, even though they could buy anything, their core wardrobe were only the things they loved and collected through the years. Maybe they wore the same things and they had a special coat or something or jacket that they would wear whenever they wanted to. And so understanding what that wardrobe should be is also an evolution of a more secure society. The more insecure we are, which we've been going through, the more we need a label, the more we need to prove how important we are, how wealthy we are, or whatever it is with a $2,500 handbag that you will then sell and get another, instead of getting a handbag. If you can afford to spend that money, nobody's stopping you. It's just, it'll look so much better when it looks like you're wearing it and you've worn it through the years, that it has the character of your, the use. Yeah. All of that is so telling. And to say, I have this t-shirt, I've worn it over and over again. It's so right in the time, whether it's because of sustainability or just being smart and being more secure. You are secure. You know who you are. So more and more women and men now are understanding that there's a value to taking a chance and being authentic. Yes, some people will think you're a jerk, and some people will think you're fabulous. And so what? Just make the investment in your authenticity.
You're an interesting case in that so we've just talked about essentially capsule wardrobes. I can live in a lot of your stuff, and it will take me through any scenario. But you also do statement pieces. You do show pieces. You do theatre. You do, you do pieces with impact. And when I first got to New York a few weeks ago, it was still freezing cold, and I was living in the silver blanket coat, which I love. But there was the first moment I went out in that coat, and I'm never. I will wear anything. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm big and old with a beard. No one tampers with me. It's like you kind of I feel like it's wonderful. Like in my 20s, I'll be like, oh God, can I wear this Vivienne Westwood jacket? It's a bit loud. Now, no one. You can do anything you like when you're older because it's fine. But I've never had such reaction as I've had from that silver coat. You cannot walk one block without someone saying, "Hey, great coat," or I was leaving brunch in the East Village and this guy I didn't know came up and fist bumped me. It was like, "Dude, great coat." And it has this transformative quality that is like, it's a bit like when Sally Field is in Soap Dish and she wants to she gets attention, so she takes Whoopi Goldberg out to pretend to notice her and ask for autographs. So there was a day I was like, I was feeling a little bit down, and I'm like, I want to be more invisible. So I couldn't wear the coat because I couldn't do it. But it's such a magical garment. Yeah. So you do both of these things. You do this, these basic lines that you can live in, and you can do yoga and you can do whatever, and you do these showpieces. How do you approach each different end of that spectrum? What is, are they two different, very thought processes?
They're really not. They're really the same. The sleeping bag coat is a commodity. It's meant to keep you warm. It's meant to last a lifetime. It's meant to take a sponge and wash it down and store it away in the winter, and in the summer and pull it out in the winter. It's doing its job. Now, there are variations on it, but the coat is also an experience, and I love it because none of it was intentional. It just was this great shape, and when you do it in silver, it reflects and it does different things. And so I've actually, I know a woman who's just the sweetest, most beautiful woman, and only wears t-shirts and jeans. And she bought a sleeping bag jacket in camo, like a short one, just at the thigh. And she wrote me the most beautiful note saying she has never get, and she's gorgeous. She says, I never really get noticed for what I wear. I've never had that experience in my life. But my coat creates this environment where strangers are so friendly and talk to me. And I've never had that experience. And I thought, oh my God, that is really a pretty fabulous thing, that people can interact and just feel like it's okay to have a conversation with this guy because he's wearing this coat. And so there is something about that that I appreciate. I had nothing to do with creating that as an intention, but I think it's good. And people who have black coats for 100 years and have been wearing them for 30 years will continue to say the same thing. Every time I wear the coat, somebody says something nice to me. So how cool is that?
Yeah. I'm struggling to think of other examples from fashion history where that is the case, where you know, I think there have been a lot of cases where there have been insider labels, and particularly in the 80s, you'd be like, oh, someone's wearing a Hilda Smith print body map piece, they are in the know. But I can't think of something shape-wise or so fundamental like that, you know, really gives that experience. It's very interesting.
At the 10th anniversary of the sleeping bag coat, I put an ad in the New York Times because that's how you communicated. And it was a full-page ad, and I invited people to come down to Wall Street, you know, where the statue and the steps are, and meet there in their sleeping bag coats. And we had a fantastic response. And so I had this guy who interviewed people from the daily newspaper when there is an accident or a politician or whatever, they stop at the microphone. So I hired him for the day, and he just interviewed everyone and asked them about their experiences in their sleeping bag coat. And we actually have a film of it, and it's hysterical. I mean, from people saying that their cat had kittens on the coat, to these one-night stands in the coat, to this one guy stealing eyeliner from Bloomingdale's in the coat, to just these, like, you meet another person in the sleeping bag coat, it's like Volkswagen owners beeping to each other. It's like everybody had these fun, very happy stories, but there was this commonality that it was an adventure, it was an experience, and the coat was doing its job. It wasn't just fashion. In fact, it was never really meant to be fashion. It was just meant to keep people warm. But fashion and the commodity, like the t-shirt or jeans, do come together. They do collide. So, and the fact that I think that I've been in business for over 50 years keeps it alive. I mean, a lot of people aren't in business for 50 years, so something sort of has a term limit on how you're going to remember it. So I think it's just, I keep pumping air to it unintentionally. Trust me, it's like I just keep making it because people want it. So I think there's something to that also, that it's reaching generations that hadn't seen it before either.
I love that video. I've watched it a million times, and I've forwarded it to lots of people. It's the most 80s thing ever. It's just gorgeous, and everyone's just, you know, you just know that it's the nightclubs they've been to, and it just brings back memories of New York from that era. It's so wonderful, and I think you should do it every 10 years because it would be a great document.
Yeah, no, we were thinking about it too, because it's sort of like the ultimate meetup, right? Yeah, it's like it was. Who knew then that was something that you can intend to do now? I have been thinking about it because there are so many great stories that are even better.
Yeah. It's the resonance of, I think one of the things that keeps fashion interesting is the resonance of clothes and what they mean to you. And which is what I'm exploring with this book. I'm interviewing people about what they've kept, and not things they bought at auction necessarily because they love them.
Right.
Something from the 20s. It's like, no, I bought this coat in 1985, and I did this in it, and I went to this nightclub, and it's, you know, I got this drink spilled in it, and I had sex with this person. It's great. It's so interesting. And when I was interviewing Jean from the Idiosyncratic Fashionistas, she was married in one of your dresses. So we talked for a long time about this dress and how she did this Bride of Frankenstein look, and it was that dress is so important to her because it wasn't just a wedding dress. It was a Norma Kamali dress that meant something to her at the time and symbolized a very certain moment in New York. What for you? I know you quite ruthlessly got rid of a lot of your archive, but do you have anything that's really special to you?
You know, not an object. Not an object. I sort of switched that little thing in my brain. I told you when I turned 50, I needed to do that. Creatively, I needed to do that. But I get excited by things all the time. But I've learned to not keep them as part of what I might lose. Like I have to let go of it before I fear losing it. So that, for some reason, has just become my DNA now. And so I don't have a specific thing, but I've had many things through the years. I think the only thing I have now that has value is Marty gives me and I give him a gift every year on our anniversary, and that's a dog tag from Walmart. So Walmart has this vending machine where you can get dog tags for your luggage, and you can pick from 4 different typefaces. And so we discovered that if you put Norma and Marty together, you get Normarty. So we have Normarty dated for every year we've been together. And we're now into the 9-year period. So that's awesome. So I have 9 dog tags and little notes that he's written to me that I have in paper clips and stuff on a necklace. So that's more of that kind of thing. But I don't have anything really fabulous that I can't live without.
I'd like to skip back to the transformative qualities of clothes. We talked a lot about this silver coat, and I've have a million things that I've kept that I feel have had the same effect on me over different years. Do you think clothes are armor? I'm thinking of. Particularly thinking of the LGBTQ community, and it's not just being tribal, it's about like, I am going to present myself as this, and I'm going to be very strong. When we discussed about the impact that HIV and AIDS had in the 80s in the village and New York generally, and suddenly everyone went from being flamboyant to like hard-bodied, military, commando boots, rough. We're going to survive this. We're in a war mode, which is really interesting. And then I'm also thinking now of someone like Billy Porter, who is this incredible sort of avatar for queerness. And I think he's so tremendous. You know, that tuxedo dress is just like, is amazing. Is that armor? Are we, do we still use clothes as armor?
You know, I think yes, but I really think that this is digressing a little bit, but to explain it. So if you think about the image of Sports Illustrated covers or Victoria's Secret or any of these real macho men looks, they're so off what is going on right now, right? So that expression of the extreme feel uncomfortable. So my thought, and so I understand here, like the gender fluid thing. But if you really want to express yourself as a woman and show the most female expression, whether it's makeup, hair, gesture, is that expression of a woman going to be the present expression of a woman or the Marilyn Monroe expression of a woman, which I always think is the most, if you want Jane Russell, Marilyn Monroe, that's female, 50s, early 60s. So what, and I believe there's going to be some creative process, because it's not just expressing yourself as a woman, but there's an art. This is not just putting on a pair of heels. This is an art. There's head to toe purpose and artistry to create this. So I'm wondering how that is going to evolve. The artistry will be there. I just know that. But I'm not sure what the expression's going to look like when you have total freedom to express your sexuality any way you want. So I think even that idea is going to change too. I'm not sure I know what it is, but I just think the artistry will definitely be there.
Will this come from a backlash against a certain kind of commercial fashion now, which is, I think the epitome of it is like the Supreme store where you have to queue up and you have to buy the drop, which is such an annoying term. It's like, and I was thinking about this recently. I was like, I used to be, what was the equivalent for me in the 80s and 90s? And I did, I wanted that one McQueen jacket that someone had bought, and I felt like it was going to really change my life by having it, but I think it's in a different way. I like it. It had a cultural resonance with me.
Right.
And I knew him, and I went to the show, and it was like, I want to own this, and it's like a part of my history. But I think there's a danger in thinking by buying a certain thing, you will transform your life, because you will not. And we've talked a lot about the sort of the transformative aspects of clothes and wearing a silver coat and feeling fabulous and being given attention in the street. But you can't go in, if you go into a high-end store and buy the whole look, that's not going to transform you into that person. It's weird. It has to be you. It really has to be you. Yeah. Which is something you've always been about, and it's about, which is why it's interesting. You're pushed to get men to explore your collections, because like, come on, you may not know about this stuff. This shop, you may not know about me, but like, put on this feather jacket. It's amazing. It will look cool on you. So will we see that? Do you think we're going to see that pull back, that commercial thing?
I think it's happening. Not everywhere, not yet, but I think that this created this false sense of having to not make a mistake. So if you get this brand right now, you're not making a mistake. And if people can see the logo, you're even safer. So the stepping away from that and sort of the expression of self and feeling good, like I want to say who I am, those are the people who are going to do it first. And their energy and their confidence, it definitely will influence others to follow. So it'll be influencing others to follow, to do their own thing, not to do what they're doing.
But it's frightening for people.
People
are intimidated.
It is, but when the norm becomes the individual versus this, so will that take time? Yes. But I remember a time when that existed. So I know it's possible. And I know it's so freeing and it's so much fun. And that's really, the 70s are where fashion in the way we know it began. Really began. So the 60s burst things open, but the 70s were, okay, this is it. So that was the beginning of fun to dress, fun to express yourself. That, I believe it can come, and I believe it's coming. The need to look like everybody else is so dangerous to our spirit. So I think everybody's looking for an expression and a way to free their spirit. We're so controlled right now. We're so overwhelmed by so many things.
But the access to it is quite difficult, I feel, as well, because we don't have those. I mean, vintage is great, yeah, you know, but if you go into a chain store, it's the same 5 things. Everyone's doing the same 5 things. It's so boring.
Well, that's why they're not doing well, and that's why they're closing.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why there's less of that kind of thing now. And so what will happen is there are a lot of smaller stores. There are a lot of very creative people opening little stores. I believe the Upper East Side, Madison Avenue, is going to be the new Lower East Side. It's the stores are all empty. More and more people are dying up in the, they're all older, and they're empty apartments, and there are younger people moving up there now. It's like the beginning of that. So these little stores, all of a sudden, I'm sure, are going to be easier and easier to get, and then they start making some things and doing just like I did at the beginning, of making one of these and one of those, and I better learn how to do sizes, and these one of a kind things start to develop again and have real value. More and more people will buy one of a kind, and then you need a lot of one of a kind. So that happened in the 70s. It can happen again. The street I was on when I started, every store was one of a kind. I mean,
that certainly feels to me like that's one of the only interesting parts of the fashion industry right now, is people who are reacting against fast fashion and Uniqlo, and you know, and I'm sure we're all guilty of shopping at these places occasionally. I have Uniqlo, you know, those heat tech things, because they're useful, and I'll be stuck in, you know, Tokyo and I've run out of socks. I'll like go to Uniqlo, because why not? But in terms of what's interesting will be this return to craft, and it'll be a return to something that everyone doesn't have. It's very... Which
is so great. I mean, it's really so fantastic. When I see some of these one-of-a-kind things that I've done through the years, I get so excited, because for me, I'm remembering making it and what that was for me, and every sweat and energy went into every piece of it, and then seeing people wearing something that nobody else has, it's just so cool. And it's not because it was so expensive and nobody else has it, it's just because everybody was doing one of a kind. This was fashion. Nobody had size scales, and you like, okay, you want that, I'll make it in your size, and that's so people were having custom things done, and it brought to life so much new talent. And this is really the hope. The rents are down. There are areas opening up just here, and I know in London too, there are little pockets of things and so you can start this culture of one-of-a-kind items. And I even think with AI, stuff like this can be done online too, which is a whole other kind of conversation. But I believe you can even do bespoke online. So that to me is the future. Going back to not having to produce thousands and thousands of pieces of things. Some things are worthwhile. Thousands and thousands of pieces of certain styles that are a commodity. That works. That, you know, yes, it's a Uniqlo piece or whatever, but like the T-shirts, that's what they should be. And some things work in numbers. But other things work in their spirit, their individuality, and you can have that for life.
Yeah.
For life, and who else has it?
Do you think what will happen with the industry in terms of clear overproduction? I mean, we're looking at, will there be a collapse that will change the culture? Will big names go down? I mean, we've saw, this is not really what I'm talking about, but the thing with Raf Simons and Calvin Klein, I was like, this is a really interesting project, and I was really excited by it. But fundamentally, it still existed to sell underwear, right? It's like we've got Peter Saville to tweak the logo, and that's cost millions, and but please come and buy some underwear because that's what the business is. But will there be a consolidation of a lot of these big businesses at the lower level that will facilitate what we're talking about?
Well, one of the things that we're doing is we're producing too much, right? Too much of not great.
Insane amounts. Right.
Too much of not great. And when you hear about people destroying clothes because they can't sell them, we have reached the lowest of the low. We have reached a really decadent, devastating part of our integrity as an industry. And so just from a sustainability point of view, that is just immoral and can't happen. So people will create a backlash that will force integrity and will force character to make decisions about projections and planning and what's really important. I think when companies get too big, instead of downsizing, they get bigger.
Yeah.
So they take on another company. Yeah. And in finance, there's a part of it that works. But in fashion is not about that. It's not about big. It's about the intimacy of that piece of clothing in your life. That's really what it's about. And so we're at that tipping point now where the door is opening for these one-of-a-kind pieces to be intimate in my life, in your life, in everybody's lives. And so sometimes it has to get really ugly before it goes right. And so the population, people will rebel. And sustainability is really, finally, the conversation that everybody is having and has to have. And for our industry, talking about buying less, buying quality, buying fewer things that you really love, never having something in your closet that you're not going to wear. And if you're not, give it to someone. Give it away. Do something with it, but don't do that again. Learn not to do that again. That excess is obscene and it's uncalled for. When people tell me I'm gonna lose weight and then fit into that, it's like, don't do that.
Don't do that. It's not gonna happen. Very enthused by what feels like a super sudden surge of interest in climate change, particularly in London at the moment. There are finally there's an end to apathy. People have lived through Brexit, which is this incredibly destructive force for 3 years, and everyone has just sort of whinged about it on Facebook and done nothing. And I have been, I'm desperate for someone to take actual physical action and agitprop. And but suddenly, there are climate change riots. It's like, no, we haven't got time. We've got to deal with this now. There are, someone's grandchild now is in jeopardy because we have 10 years or 5 years or whatever. Right. It's outrageous. So I wonder how quickly we'll get to this point with overproduction and the fashion industry, because it should be quite fast. But at the same time, what happens to those people who can't afford to buy artisanal pieces that will last a lifetime? They will still need to buy clothes. So what will their options be?
Well, I think you can buy craft pieces that are made from little villages around the world that are not expensive, that are handmade, that are really gorgeous and special. And some one-of-a-kinds don't have to be expensive. They really don't. It's more about the machine that the fashion industry becomes. When you get to a certain size, you can only get bigger. If you stay the same size, you're just gonna collapse. So that's different from finding those pieces, those things that you can have. But there'll always be commodities. There's always going to be Walmart.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a place where you get good socks, underwear, great price for t-shirts, great jeans at a certain price. Though they're always going to exist. Or just a good sweater or t-shirts made out of certain fabric. But there's always a need for that, because that can be your wardrobe for life. You don't need to have anything else. And if you get that one crafted piece, then it works with your wardrobe. So any crafted pieces you collect then will work with that core sort of commodity wardrobe. I think that, and I also think shoes, the way we look at shoes. Shoes are another kind of addiction that people have with like numbers of shoes. I'm one of those people. To me, shoes are an important part about the way I feel about myself for the day, or how I want to walk, or how I want to stand. But I have shoes since the 80s that I still wear. And I've rebuilt several pair of shoes because there is something about them, their shape, their just the pitch, whatever it is, that I really take care of and keep. So I think it's, again, you can have things and have them for a long period of time and take care of them. So if it's a special craft piece, you do that. But you always need core basics, and that will always be an industry. And like I said, Walmart's not going anywhere. They're entrenched, and they get it. They get what it is, the price, how to get it made, and serve a population.
I think so.